What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Jorge Masvidal talks Justin Gaethje fight. At UFC 291, the original BMF, Jorge Masvidal, watched as his teammate and friend Dustin Poirier took on Justin Gaethje for the vacant BMF title. Although Masvidal had hopes of wrapping the belt around the Diamond's waist, it was the highlight who secured a spectacular knockout win with a head kick that sent the former interim lightweight champ clattering to the canvas. During a recent interview with ESPN MMA, Masvidal praised Gaethje for the win, saying that he had no beef with the highlight. When he was asked what he thought Gaethje and the UFC should do with the BMF belt going forward, however, Masvidal explained,
"I think you should defend it against me at 170. If you ask me, man, that's what should happen. If I was to come back to the sport, that's a big if. But no, that's something in the future. I never knock off coming back to fighting because I love fighting. Right here. I love fighting. It's my favorite pastime. It's my favorite sport. It's my way of life. So I can never say I'm not going to fight. But I think Gaethje should just stay active. Really, fight, keep fighting, stay competing, stay fighting the world's best because that's what Obama.
From the sounds of things, despite the fact that Masvidal has already notified the UFC of his retirement, he is not ready to officially close the door on returning to the UFC again in the future. Although he's entertained the idea of boxing, fight fans may have the chance of seeing him compete inside the octagon once more. Shout out to our first comments on yesterday's video. Thanks for the support. Garry sends message to Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. Although welterweight contender Garry has continued to rattle off wins inside the octagon, there have been questions regarding whether or not he has what it takes to compete with the best of the best at 170 pounds. With a number of highly skilled grapplers in the division, like Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, and Belal Muhammad, there have been a lot of doubts about whether Garry can continue to climb the welterweight rankings with opponents who may provide an unfavorable stylistic matchup. Based on his latest comments, Garry is well aware of the doubters, and he wants to prove them wrong. During a recent interview with Severe MMA, he explained, although he wants to win the title while being known as a striker, he has no plan of ducking any grapplers once he gets to the top.
Look, I'm telling you now, anybody, you give me Sean Brady as a grappler, I'll sub him. You give me an Usman or Colby, I'll out-grapple them or I'll out-wrestle them. I don't care what it is, I will find a way to win. It's what I do. I'm a competitor, and above all else, I will get my hand raised.
As Garry went on to explain, he believes he can punch his ticket to a title shot with a dominant knockout win over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Whether or not that fight ends up coming to fruition, only time will tell. So far, Thompson hasn't shown any interest in the bout, while on the flip side, Garry has stated he's confident the fight will come to fruition. Henry Cejudo leaks UFC pay-per-view information. According to Henry Cejudo, the recent UFC 292 pay-per-view event headlined by Sugar Sean O'Malley and Aljamain Sterling bombed in pay-per-view sales. During a recent video for his YouTube channel, Cejudo leaked some information reportedly passed along by his sources. From what he's hearing, the card did just 300,000 to 350,000 pay-per-view buys.
You see, everybody was projecting that this event was one of the biggest of the year. It's not true. So my question is too for Sean O'Malley, do you have that sauce? Do you have that sauce to sell, to be a pay-per-view superstar? Yeah, you just won the belt, but you would imagine you're fighting in Boston against a current champ who has gone down and got win over legends. How big is the name of Sean O'Malley? Yeah, does he have the following through Instagram? 100%. But my question is can he sell pay-per-views?
Of course, fight fans may recall that following Cejudo's UFC 288 showdown with Aljamain Sterling, Triple C also alleged that the card did 700,000 pay-per-view buys. Those claims were quickly refuted by Aljamain Sterling, who stated that he heard the event would be lucky to break 250,000 pay-per-view buys. Sean O'Malley was quick to catch word of Triple C's latest claims this week, responding on Twitter by writing, "Henry's saying me and Aljo only did 350K pay-per-view according to his girlfriend's source. I just talked to the UFC and I heard upwards of 570K. Legit, no kizzy, not making this up. Heard Aljo versus Henry did 135K. Also, Henry's 5'2", LOL. Based on this latest exchange and the history of trash talk between the two, do you think we ever see Sean O'Malley and Henry Cejudo compete against one another? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Before we continue, make sure you give that like button some love and be sure to subscribe to the MMA Zone for all of the latest news. Alex Pereira predicts Adesanya versus Strickland. At UFC 293, Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland will compete in a highly anticipated middleweight title fight. that many fans have predicted will be a lopsided affair in Adesanya's favor. Despite that, former middleweight champion Alex Pereira has previously made it clear that if anyone has a chance of shocking Adesanya and capturing UFC gold, it's Strickland. While speaking through his longtime friend and training partner, former UFC light heavyweight champion Glover Teixeira, Pereira gave his thoughts on the fight.
You know, he say he doesn't like to talk about people too much because, you know, always like controversial, you know, people misunderstand and talk like the things with Anthony Smith right now, you know. But he's saying like Adesanya is definitely a very strong fighter and very hard fight for Strickland, but Strickland is at the top right now. At the top, guys, Strickland is the one that have more chance to beat Adesanya.
The bout between Adesanya and Strickland rapidly approaching. We want to hear from you. Who do you think gets the job done in Sydney? Drop your predictions in the comment section below. Dana White is lying about Ronda Rousey UFC return? Over the past few weeks, UFC President Dana White has vehemently denied rumors that Ronda Rousey will be returning to the octagon for one final fight at UFC 300. Following this week's installment of Dana White's Contender Series, White once again shot down rumors that Rousey would be making a return at UFC 300. While speaking to media members, he slammed the report from the Daily Mail that quoted a source close to Rousey. As he reiterated, the former champion has moved on to the next phase of her life and will not be making a return to the octagon. Despite that, Big John McCarthy believes White may be trying to do some damage control so as to avoid a big announcement getting spoiled ahead of UFC 300. During a recent episode of his Weighing In podcast, McCarthy explained why the door to a Ronda Rousey return may not be as closed as White is making it out to be.
If that is something that he's worked on, he doesn't want to put that out right away, and so I don't blame him for dismissing it and not being truthful with it. What do you expect? He's the promoter. He wants to bring it out. If that's something he's working on, he wants to bring it out where it's going to work best for the sale of that show and everything. So,
given that UFC 300 is still many months away, it's safe to say plenty more rumors regarding the event will continue to surface between now and then. Whether or not we see a big surprise announcement spoiled leading up to the event, like we did with Brock Lesnar's return before UFC 200, only time will tell. Sean O'Malley reacts to Jon Jones' comments. Heavyweight champion Jon Jones was recently impressed with Sugar Sean O'Malley's recent performance against Aljamain Sterling at UFC 292. Following the event, Jones praised Sterling during an appearance on the Overdogs podcast, comparing the streaking young fighter to Conor McGregor in his early days. Although Jones stated that he always puts his money on wrestlers to win stylistic matchups, the way O'Malley was able to defeat Sterling is very telling. As he predicted, O'Malley seems to be the total package, and as such, he's eager to watch his career develop over the next few years. During a recent episode of his Bro Malley podcast, the recently crowned champ reacted to Jones's comments.
Jon Jones talking about his favorite fighter in the world, basically said that, not quote unquote, but damn near. Sugar Sean, one of his favorite fighters to watch, up and coming. Appreciate that, Donnie. I'll buy your pay-per-view too, but yeah, I mean, if I'm not fighting in December, I'll probably go to that New York fight.
In MSG,
New York, they're already bagging me to go.
Given the respect between the two, fans are already wondering whether there's a possibility that the two men both fight on the same card in the future. Of course, while an event in the future headlined by Jones, with O'Malley competing in the co-main event, would surely do massive numbers, the big question is whether or not UFC 295 will in fact be Jon Jones' final fight inside the octagon. With O'Malley's career on the rise and Jones in the twilight years of his career, do you think we'll ever have the chance to see these two men compete on the same card? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Dana White breaks silence on intruder. A 23-year-old was charged with attempting to break into UFC President Dana White's Maine home this week. According to a report from News Center, Maine, in the early hours of Monday, August 28th, the suspect attempted to break into the house while people were home. By the time the police arrived, however, the alleged intruder had fled the scene in a vehicle. Following Dana White's Contender Series on Tuesday, the UFC president spoke about the situation, ripping into the alleged criminal.
Do you think that you're going to break into my house and there's no cameras at my house? I mean, it's crazy. I don't know. I'm assuming the guy was breaking in to try to rob the house. And my sister and her husband and some of his friends are up there visiting right now. And the guy came up and tried to kick the door in a couple times and then noticed the camera was there, tried to rip it off and rang the doorbell, freaked out and ran away.
From the sounds of things, after White had the security footage sent to him, it quickly began to circulate online in the local community where the house is located. Shortly after, the sheriff's office located and arrested the intruder. Fortunately for White, it sounds as though the situation is over and dealt with without any of his family members being harmed. And now for our breaking news story of the day. We have Conor McGregor getting exposed by a fighter. During a recent interview with Kurt Holloway, he claimed Conor didn't show up to several practices, weigh-ins, and activities on the show. Here's what Kurt had to say.
It was horrible. He definitely missed a lot. I don't think he showed up to one weigh-in. I know there was several times where they may have canceled their practices. I remember sometimes the guys would get all the way to the apex, and then all of a sudden these guys come back in several times, and we're like, thought y'all were training. They canceled. There was quite a few times where Conor didn't show, Conor canceled practices. I think he could have definitely been way more involved than he really was. Knowing who Conor is and what Conor's doing and how Conor's training, I got to give the edge to my guy Michael Chandler, man. I think he's gonna want it so much more than Conor wants it. Either one of them gets a chance to quit. Chandler's not gonna quit, but I think if Conor gets a chance to quit, he's gonna want out of there.
Do you think Conor McGregor is losing his passion for the sport of MMA? Or is it something else in his personal life? Let us know in the comments below. Top comments. I pray to God that Sergey fights Jones. It's the real fight we all want. I'm glad that Chris Weidman's injury isn't as serious as previously thought. Dana needs to pay up. At least don't make exceptions for fighters like Sean to make brand deals, but others can't. If you want to be featured on our next video, make sure to leave a comment and don't forget to check out yesterday's video in case you missed it.